Welcome to the podcast series on technology and innovation in coaching, brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading independent body. I am Claudia Day, coach and entrepreneur and founder of eHuddle. In this AC podcast series, we are privileged to talk to coaches, academics, and entrepreneurs who will be sharing with us some of their research, findings, and experiences related to technologies that could help us democratize coaching, elevate the coaching practice, lower cost, or save time, among other benefits. This is a very broad topic, going from how technologies can support a coach or carry out a coaching process. We hope this series brings technology closer to coaches. Enjoy listening. Welcome to Sam Isaacson. It is great to have you with us. Sam is a coach, also the author of the book, How to Thrive as a Coach in a Digital World. I will let you tell us more about yourself, Sam.
Sure. Thanks for having me today, Claudia. Yes, my name's Sam. I work for Grant Thornton, which is a big professional services firm leading their coaching services work. And I've been a coach for several years now, coaching supervisor. I was the chair of the trailblazer group that developed the coaching professional apprenticeship in England, which allows organizations to train their people to become accredited coaches, and that's funded through a government levy. And so that's quite an exciting thing that I was involved in, and a real privilege. And also, yes, this book that I've written has given me all sorts of opportunities to dive into the world of coaching with technology. So that's a really exciting thing to have done.
Thanks, Sam. So in that note, can you share with us which technologies you use in your coaching practice?
Yes, well, like almost everybody else, I have sort of been forced to use video calls as the primary way that I deliver my coaching nowadays. I did used to do coaching through video, but it's kind of had my arm twisted, and so now that's the primary way that I do it. And in addition to that, then I try to use a variety of creative technologies to make my coaching a little bit more interesting and engaging, and make the most of the technology that's available. The primary tool that I use more than any other has got to be PowerPoint. It's nice and simple, but just using some sort of visual, some graphic, or maybe some text that I've taken from an article or website, or an inspiring quote. I just find it helpful to have a little bank. I've got a PowerPoint deck of around about 80 slides, something like that, so that at any point during a coaching conversation, I can just think, you know what might be helpful to catalyze something is let's share my screen and bring up something that we can then reflect on together. And I use that quite a lot in pretty much every coaching session, really. And then I use some other bits and bobs that I take out from time to time. Probably the most complex of those is a tool called ProReal, which you may have come across before. It runs on a computer games engine. It's relatively advanced. There's a bit of a steep learning curve associated with it, but you walk around in a three-dimensional landscape on your computer screen, adding in avatars and objects to represent your internal representation of the particular circumstance that you're experiencing. And then it helps you to understand this a little bit better because you're sort of eliminating the need for words because you're just representing it visually. And then you can change your perspective from one position to another to understand it a little bit better and to develop empathy with other individuals involved in that same situation. So that's quite a nice one. Just take a bit of time to develop an understanding of how it works. And so particularly with coachees who have less of a preference for using technology, then I don't tend to use that as much. But for somebody who is comfortable using it and with 10 or 15 minutes of getting comfortable with it, then it can be incredibly powerful, particularly as you're changing perspectives. And then I use a few more, I suppose they're less coaching technology tools and more just bits of technology that allow me to be a bit more playful in my coaching. So probably the one that I go to most often is magneticpoetry.com. When I was a kid, then we had one of these little packs of words on magnets, and then you stick them all on the fridge and you can combine them to make new interesting poems. And the poems, they're not very good, but it is quite fun to play with. And there's a version of that you can play with online that's free. And so it's quite fun sometimes just to offer those to a coachee to allow them to write their own poem live in a coaching session, is quite restrictive because of the words, and that's the power that you then assign meaning to it yourself, because you need to. Brain's quite good at that, and that's quite good for, again, I suppose, catalyzing some sort of new thinking. I also use a tool called My Noise, which generates soundscapes that then dynamically emerge over time. And so you can step into particular situations, like the sound of being in an office or going to a beach. And in fact, I could demonstrate that. It works quite nicely on a podcast, actually. I could show you what that's like today. And it's particularly helpful when, under other circumstances, you might introduce a sort of a mindful minute or something like that to get a coachee into a particular state of mind. You can use, the sound of a beach to enter into a calming place, or maybe some music to inject some energy, or binaural beats to try to manipulate somebody's brainwaves. There's quite a lot of different things that you can do with that tool. And then there's a digital deck of sort of picture cards that I go to every so often, called points of view, that you're able to then use. It's designed really as a self-reflection exercise, but I quite like using it in a coaching session, where it will generate a way of thinking to allow you to sort of explore metaphors and assign meaning to situations that you're going through in a way, particularly if you're thinking that getting stuck and you can't see a way out. And then I do every so often, I don't do it very much, but every so often then I will use whiteboards. There's different versions of those. I tend to prefer simplicity. And so I tend to go for something like Google Jamboard rather than the complexity of a Miro or Mural. The thing that gets people excited, or gets coaches excited anyway, thinking about the future of technology, is virtual reality, which I have used quite a lot. And that allows us to meet remotely and using technology, but in a much more relaxed, embodied state. And that's quite exciting to use. So there you go. There's a whole bunch there. Which one interests you the most?
Yeah, that's so exciting. We should have maybe started with a soundscape and with the My Noise, and have put people in the right mindset. Would that be a relaxing beach or one of the other ones?
Okay, so here's the one that I tend to go to quite a lot, just at a personal level. If I'm doing some work or something and I'd like something in the background to cut out some of the background noise, maybe if people are speaking around me, or just want to get myself into a bit more relaxed state. So this is going to be the sound of a Japanese garden. I've loaded up the page here, and what I can see on the screen is a series of little stems. It looks like a graphic equalizer that you'd get on a CD player. And as I press play, then it starts to play the sound of a Japanese garden. So I can hear the sound of birds in the sky. I can hear maybe there are some crickets or something in the background. There's maybe a stream running past. I can hear maybe an owl or something like that, cuckoo, and some wind chimes. And I'm able to manipulate the sound, so I can, as I hover over them, it tells me what it is. So this one on the left here is a waterfall. If I can take that out entirely, and it changes just ever so slightly the soundscape that I'm in, and maybe I can make the sound of the birds a little bit louder by dragging up that stem, and then again it changes the shape of it. I can use something like this in a coaching session by asking a client to close their eyes, and the quality of the sound is so high that they will appreciate that sound as I'm sharing it with them, and then they can manipulate it themselves by stepping into different areas in a landscape that they're creating in their mind. And you can do that through a meditation exercise, maybe supporting it like that, or some sort of visualization, typically led by them, to say, where do you want to imagine? So like I say, there are other ones where you might imagine yourself being in an office, or on a beach, or in a desert, or in space. You can be in all sorts of different places. And so, yes, it's quite powerful for that sort of thing.
Yeah, so many applications. I'm just thinking of the exercise where you go on a walk and you see 5 different things, and you hear 5 things, and you feel 5 things. And so this would be one way where, the person is sitting in their office, but they're hearing 5 different things, and maybe they're feeling also, they can also feel 5 different things in their own environment. And so you can provide that space for mindfulness right before a session or during or after.
Well, I love it for those sorts of coachees where you mention, oh, why don't you just close your eyes and imagine yourself on a beach somewhere, and they immediately respond by saying, oh, I can't do any of that rubbish. You think, okay, well, what you can do, because you're human, is if you listen to the sound of, I don't know, being in a Japanese garden, then you can enter into that space in your mind. You don't need to imagine the sounds, because the sounds are then being played to you. And if you want to go and listen to the birds a bit more, then I can just turn the volume of the birds up. And it's not artificial at all, because they're genuine recordings of birds, and you're able to manipulate it so intelligently. It's remarkably powerful, and it overcomes that the lack of self-belief that some people have, and it helps them to discover that actually they can do that same visualization.
Perfect. Regarding these tools that you mentioned, how do you find they enhance creativity?
Well, I suppose the meaning is made by the coachee, isn't it? And so simply by giving a bit of freedom that is outside of just the coaching conversation gives our minds permission to then play with it. So just like you could do in person, where you take a piece of paper and a pencil and you say, oh, why don't you, if your situation were you on an island, why don't you draw the island? And suddenly it engages different parts of the brain, rather than just talking about it and having to rationally think everything through in straight lines, when reality doesn't work in straight lines. Then using creative tools like that can help. And it's exactly the same when we're using digital tools. It's just a different mode, really. And so our minds are able to do exactly the same thing. And so I think anything like that, where we've got the flexibility to play and to use technology to break us out of having to follow linear models and conversations that keep us in the cognitive space, I think has got to add value to a coaching conversation.
Yeah, I love that. It sounds like something great to try. And to our listeners, you gave them there several tips on how to get started. You also mentioned virtual reality as something to look for. Do you want to expand on this?
Yeah, and I love talking about virtual reality. Virtual reality is a very exciting topic, because you can put the headset on and it's immediately quite an exciting experience, because you're in a different place, and that different place has been curated very carefully for you to enjoy your experience there. And so whether there are computer games designed in virtual reality, and so you could be dropped into an incredibly exciting, tense fantasy battlefield, or you could be going to the top of Mount Everest, or into orbit, or into a beach, or in the middle of a city that you know well. You can go to all kinds of different locations, but the thing that is going to be common across all of them is that it's been designed within an inch of its life to be a pleasant experience as when you put the headset on. Even being in a violence-driven battlefield, actually, it's visually very rich. It's like going to the cinema, and so it's quite enjoyable just inherently. And then on top of that, because you've got the headset on, it prevents you from being distracted by anything else that's going on around you. So as I've started saying that, I've just noticed out of the window a bird has come and landed on a tree, and I'm immediately captivated by that bird. That can't happen in virtual reality, because our eyes are completely within this world. And as a general rule, then you're going to have 360-degree sound as well, and the sound immerses you in that space. And so as soon as you put that headset on, you are in a different location as far as your mind's concerned. You're not sitting at your desk anymore. You're sitting on a beach, or you're traversing the Himalayas. You're in an exciting location. And so that it's already a nice place to be before you've even met anybody else in it. And then the power really comes when you discover that you are able to meet other people in it. And so there are some really nice platforms being developed now. The one that I particularly use is free, and so I like it for that reason. It reduces the number of barriers that there are for people to be able to access it. And you're able to embody an avatar in this virtual location, and somebody else from another location is able to use their device and they can join you in that same location in their embodied avatar. And then you have a conversation, and you have it in exactly the same way as you would do if you were in person. So you don't have to use a keyboard and mouse to navigate your way around the location, which is not very embodied. You're doing it, you're quite conscious of the technology that you're using. When you're in virtual reality, you communicate with a person by looking at them. And so very differently from on video, even though clearly the person that you're talking to in virtual reality is not the person, it's an avatar of them. Or it could be an avatar of anything. They've personalized it. It could look nothing like them at all. You're able to have eye contact with them. And you can't do that on video because the location of the camera is different from the location of the image of the person. So when you're there on video, you choose to look at their face or you choose to look into the camera, and neither is particularly authentic. Whereas in VR, then you can look directly into their eyes and they can see you looking at them. And so there's real power in that, not to mention the fact that you're just not distracted by everything that's going on your computer screen. So while you're talking to somebody on video, you're at least subconsciously aware that your emails are sitting in the background, probably growing by the minute, just making you more busy, and then all of the notifications that are flying in from every direction. None of that happens in VR. You've got your headset on, you're in your safe space, and nothing can distract you from anything. In the particular platform that I used, and that there isn't even a clock or anything like that. You can access it, but in order to access it, you need to physically move your head to open the menu, which isn't visible, which is just a really nice experience to be in. And so I tend to find that when I'm meeting people in video, my body tends to sort of crouch forward, to become quite tense. But when I'm meeting people in virtual reality, I just notice that I relax a lot more, sit back in my chair. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the experience. I'm sure part of that is a little bit to do with novelty, but part of it is it's just a nicer way to meet. And I'm thinking about the future of communications technology and just the direction of travel when you look at where investment is going as far as big technology companies, and as organizations are starting to use this sort of technology more and more. It's difficult to believe that within a couple of years it isn't going to become incredibly mainstream to meet people using some sort of virtual or augmented reality, and for that to be quite an affordable and preferable way for people to meet. And so I expect that within the next couple of years, coachees will start to ask coaches to meet them in virtual reality, which isn't currently the case, but I think is coming soon.
You touched there on a very important point, that is that we need to move alongside our clients in adopting these technologies, because if not, we will be left behind.
In advance of 2020, where obviously video calling just took over everything, video as conferencing has been around since the 1960s. I think the first prototype of video conferencing was. So it's been around for quite a long time. And I remember it's been present in the workplace for my whole career. But for almost all of that time, it was this exclusive, very geeky, very expensive and inaccessible way of meeting people that you tended to need technical support present. You needed to book out the video conferencing room. And then, I don't know what sort of year it would be, 2015, something like that. For the first time, I tried to get a meeting with somebody and they said, oh yeah, here's my Zoom link or whatever they were using. And I then had to work out on the fly, oh dear, I'm going to have to, they clearly expect me to meet them in video conferencing. And when I meet them is going to be the first time that I'm learning how to use it. And so I'm already going to be feeling uneasy with it. And I think this is true across all of technology, really. Anytime that we introduce technology to a coachee, there's a chance that they're going to be feeling that same sense of trepidation, nervousness around having to use a piece of technology that they're not ready for. And I'd much rather that we as coaches prepare ourselves for something that's coming, so that when we do get that first request from somebody where they say, oh, here's my virtual reality link, that we don't feel like we can't, that we have to go through a learning curve inside a coaching session. I'd much rather that we're ready to deal with that when it comes, and be able to build rapport with them, on their own terms.
Yeah, you made me think with that. You took me way back at work times before when we had to book the rooms, and then suddenly on a personal side, Skype, of course, came along and started using Skype also on a personal side, and then it also became for work, and then all these other technologies came along.
Mm.
And the thing you're making me look most forward to is when you said that you feel less crouched or less tense when you are in virtual realities. Maybe that can help with the Zoom fatigue and that side of things.
Yeah,
So that's
absolutely.
a nice thing to look forward to.
Yeah, honestly, virtual reality is so much less intense than video. I can't overstate that. It's so much more like meeting somebody in person. It's difficult to describe until you've experienced it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, experiencing it. It's the same with Audible. I had friends recommending Audible, and I used to sort of say that's not for me. And then suddenly, reading books in any time of the day is so much easier because I can do it listening to them, and little things like that, I guess, help us think about this new technologies in a friendlier or more accessible way. In that same note, what suggestions can you give to the listeners on learning about these new technologies?
It is important for us to think about coachees first. So that point around not forcing technology onto coachees, I think, is a really important one, because the purpose of the technology has got to be to make our coaching better, rather than as just using new technology because it's there and shiny and exciting. And particularly not if it's getting done to us. It doesn't put us in a great frame of mind for building trust. And so I think the main reason why we should do it is that if coachees want us to be doing that, then in order to build the rapport, we need to be ready to. And that includes the sort of technologies that we can use within coaching and, of course, the communications technologies themselves. And so I think learning about new technologies, do an internet search about something and you'll discover all sorts of different things. Most of the coaches that I talk to that come along and say, I don't know anything about coaching technology and I've got no idea how to start. If I say to them, how many times have you tried searching for the answer to your question on the internet? They say, I've never tried that. We think, well, let's start with the alphabet, shall we? It's such a basic thing. And these companies are so desperate for us to find out about the technology. It's generally quite easy to find information. The question often is, well, I don't really know what search term to be typing in to find out what I'm interested in. And I just think, well, start with the coach that you are anyway. So that, the way that I like coaching is I enjoy coaching and having a model to catalyze some thinking or to use some sort of creativity. So when I'm there in person, I do tend to carry around with me a little deck of picture cards or some little Playmobil characters that we can use to create a constellation, or be ready to throw out a notebook and get somebody to draw a picture. I like that sort of thing. And so the creative technologies that allow me to do that they're quite authentic to me as a coach. Thinking about yourself as a coach, and therefore what are the sorts of activities that you like doing in coaching, and maybe you're just a conversation-led coach, in which case let's not overthink it. Don't try to use too much technology. It'll take away from who you are as a coach. But if you're somebody who does carry around a pack of Russian dolls in your bag, and you haven't done it at all over the lockdown periods because you can't imagine a way where you'd be able to do it because your Russian dolls are with you physically and your coachee isn't, there must be a digital solution to that. I expect that there probably is an app somewhere that allows you to open Russian dolls. I mean, it sounds like the sort of thing somebody would develop as a joke, but at the very least, you could create, 6 or 7 different size. I don't know how many dolls there are in a typical Russian doll, but, 6 or 7 different size dolls, pictures, stick them on a PowerPoint slide, and then share your screen and give the coachee control and ask them to start moving the dolls around. It's the same concept. It's just happening digitally instead. And so I think thinking about who you are as a coach and then trying to apply a bit of a digital mindset to that, assisted by a bunch of internet searches and just chasing it down the rabbit hole, I think you'll be surprised by how much you already know. Be curious about it, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that, looking inside of who you are, how you work as a coach, and then translating it to what's out there. Sounds great. You mentioned you use free for virtual reality. Do you use that with clients as well?
Yeah, that's the one that I use. I've never, forced a coachee to use a piece of technology that they don't already have access to. And so the free version that I use is an app that you can download on your phone, and then you slot your phone into a piece of cardboard. Now, the cardboard template you do have to pay for. I mean, you don't have to pay for it, but in practice, it's much simpler. It costs something like £3 for you to get a piece of cardboard that's already in the right template with a pair of lenses shipped to you, and then you just build it yourself. You can get some plastic options for £10 or £20. So it's not a huge cost investment, but for somebody who's wanting to just try out the experience of meeting somebody in virtual reality, it's perfectly adequate as an experience. And then I have met people in this same platform where they already own a virtual reality headset, and so they have used that in order to access it, and it's cross-platform, and so it doesn't really matter. You could have one person with a headset and one person in a piece of cardboard, and you meet in exactly the same way. There are some more advanced tools where you do need headsets for. And so there are some virtual reality tools out there that are being designed specifically for use cases in a learning setting. So I wouldn't specifically describe them as coaching technology, although the companies themselves probably would try to, which I think is a little bit misleading, at least as far as coaches are concerned, particularly because they tend to be quite directive in style, and coaches, as a general rule, want to push to things being as non-directive as possible. So be a little bit careful if you're just Googling for virtual reality coaching tools, because you'll probably not find things that you're looking for. But those do tend to make use of the advanced technology that you get in professional VR headsets. For example, having objects that you hold in your hand so that you've got hand motions within the virtual reality location, rather than if you're using a piece of cardboard, you have no hands, and so you have one button and that's all.
I guess it is a big shift, or maybe it isn't, and I guess that's where the question is going. Is it a big shift from coaching someone on a video conference call and then going to the virtual reality space? As in, would you just ask your normal coaching questions, or how to see it for coaches that haven't done it before?
It's so much more natural that the technology just disappears, because when you're using video, the experience of using video, now that you've got all the apps downloaded, then you don't really notice it anymore. But if you imagine for the first time somebody introduces a new video platform to you, then you click the link and the first thing it says is, do you trust this? Do you want to give it access to your video? You have to go through all of these questions. You have to download it. You have to test it to make sure that it's working. It takes you a decent 5 or 10 minutes before you've actually got the thing open. And then all of the buttons are in different places, and so you don't really know how to mute yourself or turn your camera off. You don't know how to share your screen the first time that you do it. You have to go through that little learning journey in order to use the technology well. You have to do exactly the same thing with virtual reality. The difference is that once you've done that, and it doesn't take any longer, you create an avatar, it will create one randomly for you, and you can personalize it to whatever extent you want to, but actually once you're in, you're just in. So you put the headset on, and then you're that character. And as the coach, then you are able to guide the coachee by choosing a location and inviting them to it. So they just have to select the option yes rather than no. And then you're controlling everything. So they just sit back, relax, and the technology sort of happens around them. And so actually the experience as far as barriers caused by the technology is concerned, it's much, much lower in virtual reality than it is in video, because in video there's just so much, all of these buttons around you and menus that they just aren't present in VR because you're just in the moment. And so actually it's much more like coaching in person. You're able to ask your normal questions. You can look around you in a lot more natural a way. With video, then you tend to end up staring at the tiny screen, particularly when you're working with teams. If you're working with a team and you're doing video coaching, I find it very difficult. And even if for no other reason than that you're trying to look around, 4 or 5 different faces, and all of them are in one place. You've got no non-verbal signals to say, I'm expecting to hear from this person. You have to sort of call out, okay, Alan, we haven't heard from you for a while. What would you like to say? In virtual reality, because you're in a physical-ish, it's virtual, isn't it? But it feels very like a very physical location. You can just turn your head and look at Alan. And then for a start, it's better for you physically, isn't it? You don't want to be staring in one location for the whole day. It's not very healthy. But if you look across at Alan, then he knows that you're expecting to hear from him next because your eyes are boring into him. And so, yes, it is much more natural than video conferencing is. And also a really noticeable experience in virtual reality when you've come out of video coaching is that when you are speaking to people through video, there's a natural latency. So because there's so much data being transmitted through the video, when you're then speaking, there's got to naturally be a delay in order for you to speak more naturally so that your the video and audio is synced. And as a result of that, I don't know if you've ever tried it, if you've been to a Zoom birthday party and you try to sing happy birthday, you can't do it together because there's this delay and it's horrible. But you can in virtual reality because the only data points are that there's the audio still, that's okay. And then you've got 3 points of data in the headset for the different axes that you're moving your head around on, rather than the tens of thousands of points of data that you have in a high quality video feed. So it doesn't suffer from that same lag. So yeah, it's a much more natural, much more pleasant experience than video coaching.
Well, thank you for bringing it closer, and definitely it sounds like Facebook is going in the right direction because it sounds like it's closer to us, and it's definitely the future.
It's not Facebook anymore, is it? It's Meta, so we've got to call it Meta rather than Facebook. But yeah, I think they're a particular organization with obviously a particular agenda. They're worth watching because, they're investing huge amounts, that they're recruiting 10,000 people just in Europe just to work on virtual reality. So if you don't believe that virtual reality is coming, it is. There's no stopping it when you've got that many people working on it. That's more than exists in most organizations. Meta is driving it, but Microsoft's got something. Avatars are appearing in Microsoft Teams from 2022. Microsoft Mesh, it allows you to meet using virtual reality. Snapchat's owners have invested heavily in virtual reality. It's everywhere. It's a really big investment area, and all of the big technology hardware brands are investing in it as well. The really noticeable one there is, the noticeable absence is Apple, which haven't released virtual reality headset yet, but they are developing one. And you know what Apple likes to do. They wait until it's absolutely perfect before it's out. But that should be out in 2022. Xiaomi, who are the world's biggest manufacturer of smartphones, they're releasing a pair of smart glasses which aren't virtual reality, but will allow you to take calls and have an image of the person projected into the space in front of you, so that's a step towards that. It's getting people comfortable. And they're well known for making really high quality technology at a very affordable price. So that's coming first half of 22 as well. And yes, it's on its way. It's coming quite quickly, and people will get into it once it's affordable and is working well. I can't imagine they won't.
Exciting times ahead of us. Sam, is there anything you want to share with the listeners about your book?
I suppose it's important for me to outline that as much as I come and talk about all these technologies that I'm using, and I am quite enthusiastic about it, that the purpose of the book is not to be evangelical about technology as a coach. That the message in the book really is that coaching is a human profession. It's meant to be a human experience of allowing humans to work with each other to make our thinking better, and that's how the profession has grown. We've been using coaching questions, as a species for as long as we've been doing anything. It's basically the core of being human is that style of questioning and reflective practice. So technology has existed for a shorter period of time than coaching has, and so in order for us to do coaching best, we should be using the technology that makes coaching more pure rather than lessens its, rather than reduces the amount of coaching that we're doing. And I think there's a bit of a temptation with some technologies that claim to be coaching technologies that that wants to push us away from being coaches ourselves and makes us want to rely on the technology. For example, there are coaching question bank tools available that allow you to coach live and have the questions sort of generated for you. which makes me think, well, if you coach like a robot, then the robot's going to generate those questions better than you ever could, because robots are better robots than humans are. But if you want to follow your intuition and be creative and disruptive and unexpected, and the best coaches are, then those question banks are going to limit you. They're going to make you a worse coach. So I think, we need to use technology sensibly. And the way I've approached it in the book is by outlining what benefits technology offers, what risks technology presents. And it's really important to consider the risks, because as soon as you add something new in, then there's something new to go wrong. And then to think about some of the ethical dilemmas that technology presents. I also go into a whole bunch of detail around making it a little bit more practical. And so, what are the tactical things that we can do to start using technology more and to start thinking about which technologies we should and shouldn't be using. But really, it's about those principles. What is it that we can think about when a new piece of technology does come along? And where are those points where a coachee says, I'd like to use this piece of technology, and we as coaches say, in order to stand by my ethical principles as a coach, I'm going to refuse to work with you if that's the only way that we can, because the technology is going to make the coaching less effective, just in the same way as we would if somebody were to come along and say, actually they're expecting mentoring and we're not a mentor, we're a coach. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's good to think about things from that perspective as well.
Yes, this new world brings us lots of things to think about and to keep present and to be ready to, in some way, deal with. So it sounds like a good start to read and to get thinking about those concepts in a different way, as you suggest. Is there anything else you would suggest the listeners to read about?
Yeah, I think you could go down a whole bunch of different routes here. If you're interested in technology, then there's no end of books about technology, and there are a bunch of documentaries that have come out recently. There was one that was particularly interesting that I found recently called Coded Bias, which is around facial recognition technology. It's around the ethics, really, of artificial intelligence and how understanding how data sets are inherently biased and the impact of that. It's not necessarily, or my conclusion from it is not necessarily that we shouldn't be using biased data sets, because every data set has to be biased by its nature. It's just what's going to happen. But to know that and to be able to consciously consider, well, what is it? How are we wanting it to be biased? Are we going to have a bias towards one thing or another? Because if we don't make that choice, somebody else is going to on our behalf, or nobody's going to, in which case we all are unconsciously. I think playing with technology is probably the best thing that we can start to do if we want to become more comfortable with it. Just giving ourselves half an hour a week, where that half an hour is dedicated to just finding a new piece of technology, having a play, going on the app store on your phone and finding something new and different and just seeing, I wonder if I could use this in a coaching session. How would that work? What new discoveries could be unlocked through asking a coachee to interact with it. That's probably the best use of time.
Well, it sounds like our innate training to be coaches and to be curious and to challenge our assumptions will help us in this journey in discovering technology.
Absolutely, yeah. If you're curious, then let's go for it. And if you're not curious, what are you doing being a coach? Come on. We should do it. We should do it because we are interested in it and we love our profession.
For the audience to get to know you better, we have 2 questions, which is, what book for fun would you recommend?
I absolutely love the author Adrian Tchaikovsky, and he wrote a book, it was several years ago now, called Children of Time. And it's the most extraordinary fiction book I've ever read. It plots. It seemed, I think, oh gosh, it's been a while since I've read it, but I remember it blowing my mind at the time. I enjoyed it so much. It plots the evolutionary course of humans alongside the evolutionary course of an insect species on some foreign world, and then introduces them to each other. And because they have evolved alongside each other, the humans are humans, but the insects have evolved in their own way into this mature species that's able to communicate and understand, but does it in its own specific way. So, for example, humans make images based upon pixels that start in the top left-hand corner, go from left to right, and then go down the next line, and then you've constructed your image. But these insects were spider-like, and so their images started from a pixel in the middle and then went out in a spiral. Because what other logical way would there be to construct an image? And Adrian Tchaikovsky is he knows insects very well, and is able to tell this story in such a compelling way. So yeah, if you want a book recommendation from me, then it would be that one.
Nice. I'll have to get a little bit over the fact that it's spiders, that I have a phobia for them, but it sounds definitely like an interesting read. And then the other question is, what 5 objects do you have around you, and why are they relevant?
The first thing that leaps out at me is on the desk in front of me by my laptop, I have got a map of a place called Portsrude Forest. And Portsrude Forest is a fantasy location that I constructed for a book that I wrote called Escape from Portsrude Forest. So there you go, another book recommendation, and this one's from me, but it's a fiction one. In fact, it's interactive fiction. So in this book, then you are a brave knight who wakes up in the middle of this forest with no memories of what happened before and no apparent way out of the forest, and you have to sort of unlock forest by discovering what you did the previous night and undoing all of the mistakes that you made. It's quite funny, but a friend of mine drew the map for me, which appears in the book, and I have the original here. So that's the first thing. I've got a box of Twiglets, so there you go. I like to always have some snacks on hand just in case I'm feeling a bit low on energy and just need something to get me through till lunch. There's a bottle of Calpol here because I've got 4 young children, and having a bottle of Calpol within arm's reach of the adults, not the children, obviously, is a helpful thing to have. I have a little miniature from a war game. I'm such a nerd, I know, but I like playing these tabletop war games where, you move little toy soldiers around. And so I have this little miniature at the moment that I'm painting of an alien archer. He's got 3 arms because they cloned these aliens to be as effective as possible and figured that if they have 3 arms, they can shoot faster, even if they're a bit less accurate. And he's also holding a big banner above his head. So that's nice. And just, there you go. It tells you something about me, doesn't it? I wonder what. And then that's 4 things, isn't it? And 5th thing, I've got my cardboard virtual reality headset. So at the drop of a hat, if somebody says, when that first time happens, when someone says, here's my VR link, I'm already equipped to do it straight away. I don't need to go scrabbling around. It's there, it's available. There you go. That's 5 things.
That's a great picture of letting us into your world for a second. To our listeners, what is the best way in which they can contact you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah, the easiest way is find me on LinkedIn. I'm just my name. And yeah, please connect with me. I've written a bunch of articles that I shared there as well. And so there's probably some more information available there for those that are interested too. And
where can they buy your book?
Yeah, the easiest place for most people is probably going to be somewhere like Amazon or your local bookshop or direct from the publisher, which is McGraw-Hill Open University Press.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for joining us. It was great to hear about the use of technology and also virtual reality, and for you to bring it so close and let us in some way see the future from today's world.
It's been an absolute honor, and I've enjoyed every moment. Thank you.
So thank you for listening to another episode by the Association for Coaching. I have been Claudia Day. Our purpose is to help coaches in the process of navigating the new technologies that are arising in this field. If you would like to find out more, please follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at theassociationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest episodes and conversations, as well as our digital learning calendar.